Welcome to the 2016 NCAA Rules and Officiating video. My name is George Druchis, NCAA National Coordinator of Umpires, and it is my humble privilege to be of service to college baseball. In this video, and with any subsequent videos throughout the season, please note that no attempt is made to embarrass any institution, head coach, umpire, or student athlete. The goal of this and all videos is to develop a national style of umpiring, resulting in a consistent enforcement of the rules as written across all divisions, all games, no matter the geographic area of this great country. Administrators, conference coordinators, coaches, student athletes, and umpires, we are all stakeholders in this consistency. And now let's get started with Tom Heiler, our Director of Umpire Training, in this year's Instructional Rules and Officiating video.
First rule that we're going to talk about this year is Rule 82D, hit by pitch. In 2015, language was changed with this rule to state that all the hitter had to do was to make an effort to avoid being hit by the pitch. The Rules Committee met this past summer and determined that this rule was being inconsistently enforced by our officials. So the Rules Committee looked at some different language that they felt would make it easier and lead to a more consistent enforcement by our officials. So effective with the 2016 season, the NCAA Rules Committee is going to insert a new approved ruling into the rule book that states that the batter must not try to intentionally get hit by the pitch. The NCAA Rules Committee and our baseball umpire program staff feel that this language being inserted into the rule book as an approved ruling will lead to a more consistent enforcement of this sometimes difficult rule. Ideally, batters should not be trying to intentionally get hit by pitch to get on base, and if so, they will be directed to stay at home plate. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at these clips and use the language that we're going to be using in 2016, and I'll tell you how the umpires are going to enforce these clips. This first one here is one that we see a lot. We have a batter who just stands there and allows the ball to hit him. This batter is going to be judged by the home plate umpire to intentionally have tried to get hit by the pitch. Here's another one that we see very often. This one's hit down near the left knee of the hitter. The umpires, what they're looking for on this clip right here is watching this left knee. And they're going to see this left knee turn with the pitch. They're going to judge that as intentionally trying to get hit by the pitch. Another clip. The umpires are going to judge this clip as a hitter not trying to intentionally get hit by the pitch. There was no intent by the hitter on this clip. Here's one from last year's Super Regionals, and surprisingly, we're still seeing a lot of these. The batter just stands there and lets the ball hit him. This batter is going to be directed to stay at home plate. Here we're going back to another example of a ball hitting down on the hitter's lower leg. The umpires are watching this left knee. When they see that left knee turn with the ball, they're going to judge that as intentionally trying to get hit by the pitch. Here's another one. This is what the Rules Committee is trying to get our hitters not to do. This is a part of the safety rule here as well. This batter is intentionally trying to get hit by the pitch. He's going to be directed to stay at home plate. Here's one that can be very dangerous, but very difficult for the umpires under the old rule. Was this batter intentionally trying to get hit? No. This batter had started his swing, and that becomes very difficult for the umpires to try to determine under last year's rule. But this one should be very clear under this year's rule. This hitter was not intentionally trying to get hit by the pitch. The difficult part of that last one here that we're now watching again is that the batter had started his swing. After starting his swing, it's very difficult at times to judge, but we can tell by looking with the new language, this batter did not intentionally try to get hit by the pitch.
Thank you, Tom. Some very good clips. As the national coordinator, I would like to reiterate that I feel this rule is not consistently enforced in 2015 by our officials. Moving forward, our Rules Committee and our baseball umpire program staff now feel that by using the new approved ruling for 2016, that this will lead to a much greater level of consistency in the enforcement of this rule.
Okay, the next rule we're going to talk about today is going to be Rule 8.7, and that's going to be slides at home plate. The NCAA Baseball Rules Committee is very concerned about the safety and well-being of our student athlete, and most importantly, reducing unnecessary collisions that sometimes take place at home plate. Now, over the last few years, the baseball umpire program has felt that our officials have not enforced this rule with the greatest level of consistency because of the wording in the rule book has made their job very difficult. The NCAA Rules Committee is again adding new approved rulings to the rule book, this time for slides at home plate. The NCAA Rules Committee and our baseball umpire program staff feel that these approved rulings will allow our officials to officiate this sometimes very difficult rule with a much greater level of consistency. The most important element of this rule is safety.
The first set of requirements we will break down will be with a runner attempting to score who chooses to slide either head first or feet first. Secondly, if the runner does not slide, it will make a difference whether the catcher is in possession of the ball or not. If a runner does not slide, he will always be required to make an obvious attempt to avoid a collision. Again, any runner who does not slide must always make an obvious attempt to avoid any collision. Let's first start with a runner who slides. If a runner slides feet first, the runner's buttocks and legs must touch the ground prior to contact with the fielder. If the runner slides head first, the runner's body must contact the ground prior to contact with the fielder.
Okay, let's go ahead now and take a look at some plays where the runner is sliding into home plate. This first one here is just from a couple seasons ago. There was a lot of debate on whether or not this was illegal or not under the old rule. I think you'll find that it's going to be very obvious under the current rule here how we're going to officiate this play. This runner here is sliding feet first, so it's very simple that his buttocks and legs must touch the ground prior to contact with the catcher. This is an illegal slide. This runner did not have his buttocks touch the ground prior to contact with this catcher. The umpire here is going to call time and call this runner out and return all other runners to the last legally occupied base at the time of this interference slide. A very easy call now for our officials. There's still judgment here on whether or not the umpire thinks that this is malicious or not. Here's a runner doing a good job and would certainly be legal with our new rule. You'll see here that his buttocks and legs make contact with the ground prior to contact with this catcher. This is a no call by the official. This is exactly what the Rules Committee would like to see happen when runners do decide to slide at home plate. All right, let's take a look at another one here from last season. This runner is going to tag from third base. Okay, this runner decides to slide feet first. Again, just a safe call last year under our previous rule. Still, a lot of people might try to argue under the old rule whether this was a legal slide or not. Very obvious here with our new language that this runner's legs and butt must touch the ground prior to contact with this catcher. This is an illegal slide. This umpire will call time. He will call this runner out and return all other runners to the last touch base at the time of the interference. Let's take a look at one from last year's regionals. A lot of controversy on this play, whether or not this was legal or not. This runner, I think, was going to slide head first and then decided to slide feet first. Kind of got caught halfway between. This was a no call by the officials. Led to a pretty good argument on the play as well. In this play right here, the umpire will again call time. This runner will be called out, and all other runners will return to the last legally occupied base at the time of the interference. Also remember that on this play, the umpire may also judge that this was malicious contact and this runner could be ejected.
Let's now discuss a runner who chooses not to slide. First, let's remember that a runner is now always required to make an obvious attempt to avoid a collision with the catcher. Prior to the runner getting to home plate, if the catcher is already in possession of the ball, the runner simply has three choices. 1, the runner must slide. 2, the runner must give himself up. Or 3, the runner must make an obvious attempt to avoid collision with the catcher.
Okay, now we're going to take a look at a play at the plate where the runner does not slide, but the catcher is in possession of the ball prior to the runner getting to home plate. Okay, let's take a look at this play here. We're going to have a runner tagging up from third base. You'll notice in this video clip here that the catcher is going to be in possession of the baseball prior to the runner getting to home plate. This runner only has three choices. Number one, this runner can slide. Number two, this runner can stop and completely give himself up. But number three, he must attempt to avoid any collision here with this catcher because this catcher is in possession of the baseball prior to the runner getting to home plate. This is an illegal slide. Time will be called by the umpire on this play. This runner will be called out for not avoiding a collision with this catcher here because the catcher was in possession of the ball prior to the runner getting there. Also, in this video clip, this runner should be ejected. He did not avoid the collision, and it was malicious. He tried to dislodge the baseball on this play. This is malicious contact as well as interference. It's important to note on plays like this that the umpires are looking at two different things. Number one, is the slide legal? Number two, if there's any contact, is it malicious or not? Just because a play does not involve malicious contact, the umpires still are looking at the slide to determine if the slide is legal. If the slide is legal, there will be no malicious contact. If the slide is illegal, the runner will always be called out. But if it's malicious, he may also be ejected. There's two parts to this rule here to take a look at when the umpire is officiating. This umpire did an excellent job on this video. He called the runner out, and he also ejected this runner from the contest for malicious contact.
All right, now let's discuss a runner attempting to score who does not slide, and the catcher is not in possession of the ball prior to the runner getting to home plate. The runner must not deviate his direct pathway to the plate unless his actions are to avoid a collision with the catcher. The runner must not initiate an avoidable collision. The runner is always required to try and avoid a collision with the catcher. Lastly, it should be noted that a runner on his direct pathway to home may not be able to avoid a catcher completely who moves at the last moment to field an offline throw.
Now we're going to talk about the most difficult part of the play. A runner running to home plate and the catcher who is not in possession of the baseball. This runner, first of all, cannot deviate his direct pathway to home plate in order to initiate contact with the catcher. This runner must always do everything possible to avoid any collision with this catcher. As we're watching this play here now, this runner is tagging up from home plate. As he's approaching home plate, the catcher started legal out in front of home plate. At the very last second, this catcher had to move into the baseline to catch the baseball. He didn't go there to redirect the runner. He went there at the very last second because he had to go there to catch the baseball. Now, as we watch this runner here, this runner had an opportunity to avoid this head-on collision with this catcher. This runner here chose to go straight through the catcher. This runner here needs to make an obvious attempt to avoid contact with this catcher. Yes, the catcher was in the baseline, but the catcher started legal out in front of home plate, and he had to move into the baseline to catch the baseball. This runner had time to avoid this collision. Now, there's going to be times in this situation where the catcher is going to step into the baseline so quickly in order to catch the baseball that there may be a collision. But in this video clip here, I will be instructing our umpires to call this runner out for interference, and in this particular case, we will also be ejecting this runner.
Now, let's discuss the final revision for 2016. This is a very important element and will certainly require our coaches educating any player who may be taking plays at home plate. Unless the catcher is in possession of the ball, the catcher cannot block the pathway of the runner as he is attempting to score. The catcher must give the runner a pathway to the plate. It is not a violation if the catcher blocks the pathway in a legitimate attempt to field the throw, in reaction to the direction, the trajectory, or the hop of that incoming throw. An important element is that the catcher's action of blocking the plate without the ball will be ignored if the umpire deems that that action had no bearing on the play.
Now we're going to talk about the last part of the rule, and that's catcher obstruction. Catcher cannot stand in the baseline without the ball. Catcher must give a direct pathway to home plate to the runner. Let's take a look at these clips here. You're going to notice in this clip that the catcher starts legal. He starts out in front of home plate. He's given a complete pathway to home plate to the runner. But you'll notice here now, at the very, very last second, the catcher is moving into the baseline because the ball is imminent and he has to go there in order to catch the baseball. That is legal. Now let's focus on what the runner does and how he handles the situation. Remember now, this runner is required to make an obvious attempt to avoid a collision with this catcher. You'll notice here that at the very last second, the catcher moves into the baseline, and you'll see the runner make a little bit of a move here to his right to make an obvious attempt to avoid contact. And he actually tries to go around the catcher here at the last second. The catcher is legal, the runner is legal. This is a no call. This is a good play here, and this is exactly what we want. Now remember, it's very difficult for a catcher here who has to step into the baseline at the very last second for a runner to completely avoid contact. But initially, this catcher gave a direct pathway to home plate. The catcher did what he was supposed to do. He had to step into the baseline at the very last second to catch this baseball. The runner did his job. He made an obvious attempt to avoid contact here with the catcher. All right, here's the last clip here. This is a really good one, and this is one of the clips that really started the whole process of thinking how we were going to handle plays at the plate starting in 2016. You'll notice here that this catcher does two things wrong. Number one, he's in the base path without the ball when he shouldn't be there. The ball is not imminent. He did not start first out in front of home plate in fair territory. He did not give a direct pathway to the plate to the runner. The catcher standing in the base path, we now have obstruction. Now you'll also notice that while this catcher is in the act of fielding the ball, he is now taking his left foot and trying to further redirect the runner. That is illegal as well. That is obstruction by the catcher. This is type 1 obstruction. The umpire will call time. He will award this runner home plate. All the other runners, including the batter runner, will be awarded the base they should have received had the obstruction never occurred.
Coaches and umpires, when I was out this past spring, many of you voiced your concerns regarding the violent nature of plays at home plate. The Rules Committee and our baseball umpire program have gone to work to cleanse our game. Our umpires now have measurable tools at their disposal to more consistently officiate this difficult rule. A special thank you to our Rules Committee for adopting these new approved rulings. One of the areas of our game that our Rules Committee is very concerned about is the number of ejections and the behavior of players, coaches, and umpires. The overall number of ejections and suspensions increased last year. In Division I alone, we had 150 head coach ejections last season, which is a 35% increase over the previous year. All reports are filed for any NCAA incident. These reports are filed with the Baseball Umpire Program, Secretary Rules Editor, and Conference Coordinator. I then, in turn, forward a copy to the offending team's Director of Athletics and the respective conference office. Yes, I understand that our umpires make mistakes, and no one is more concerned about that than myself and the Baseball Umpire Program. Quite frankly, you would be appalled by the language that is being used on the field. One item that many of our coaches have requested is to be better informed by our umpires when they are about ready to be ejected. Effective with the 2016 season, our umpires are being directed to look you in the eye and say, "Coach, this is your warning. If you continue, you will be ejected." It is our hope that this language will aid in the reduction of both ejections and suspensions that take place. Please understand, it is your responsibility to come onto the field under control and to address our officials in a manner that will encourage a more professional dialogue. There are times, coaches, that when you come out onto the field, not under control, certain actions will not require a warning and you may be immediately ejected. Finally, let's work together to build a more positive relationship and reduce unnecessary ejections.
The next rule I'd like to talk about today is Appendix E, getting the call right, in the back of the rule book. These are the guidelines that the umpire crews follow at the NCAA level on deciding whether or not to go for help on a call. If you come out as a coach and ask the umpire to go for help, they are not required to go for help. The calling official has to agree that there's an element of the play that he's missed and that another umpire on the crew will be in a position to offer him the information that he needs. Once the crew decides to get together, it is a rule under Appendix E in the rule book that the requesting coach must go back to his position. If it's the dugout, you must go all the way back inside the dugout. If you're coaching base, you must go back to the coach's box. If the call is not changed, you are not allowed to leave your position and not allowed to further to argue the call. There has been a lot of discussion over the last year or two whether the 31 move is legal or not legal. It is illegal in Major League Baseball, and I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. College baseball does allow the 31 move.
This concludes the 2016 NCAA Rules and Officiating video. Please go to ncaabaseball.arbitersports.com and view all the latest NCAA rule interpretations and many other resources at this location. A special thank you to the NCAA Rules Committee and NCAA staff for their help in developing this video. All should study and review the 2015 and 16 NCAA Baseball Rulebook for complete information on these rules and others not included in this video. One final area of concern in our game is the use of spit tobacco. NCAA playing rules require any individual who uses spit tobacco at an NCAA site to have the offender and the head coach ejected. The NCAA Sports Science Institute has asked that we end this year's video with the following public service announcement. Thank you. Being a part of a team means backing each other up.
Cover the base.
Back up the throw. Step up to the plate.
And strike tobacco out of the game. To help a teammate or help yourself quit, go to nstep.org. That is nstep.org. There you will find resources and 7 steps to quitting spit tobacco. Thank you.